Hey, welcome back to Your Money in Real Estate. I had to jump in quickly because Richard and I just are not stop talking about real estate. And I want to bring up a point here for some of you that are watching that what we're talking about here, it sounds like, it almost sounds like that whole thing, it's too good to be true. You guys are somehow going to make money from it. And I honestly can say, I know that you're not getting rich off of the book. You're an educator of real estate. You have found a niche. And I was just saying to you that I found a niche as well, that I want to talk about things that are not necessarily always talked about. There's lots of books people can buy out there, and you nailed it. Books won't change your attitude. No. It's the attitude that has to start somewhere. And that's why when we talked at the very beginning, is to hook up with a group of people that you can start talking real estate. And that's, for me, that's exactly how it started.
If books made a difference, they wouldn't keep making more diet books. Because you'd read the first one, get the point, and be done with it.
That's right.
But because we don't listen, and because it doesn't really matter, people will do what they want to do. The reality here is that, I'm an educator, you're an educator, and in this space called real estate, we have become leaders in that space because we're leading by way of example.
Richard, don't mean to cut you off.
Please do.
I have a caller, Sandra, on the line. Sandra, hi. Welcome to Your Money in Real Estate. What's your question?
Hi. In the example that you were using there for the $65,000 investment, what, how in Canada or here we have the land transfer taxes and stuff like that, what kind of additional expenses or costs would I be looking at for that particular example?
Well, what's interesting is that's a great question, Sandra, is that in the States, land transfer taxes are actually quite low. Contrary to what popular belief is, in a place like Arizona, for example, it's actually zero. In a place like Florida, it's less than 5%. And so what you've got here is interesting numbers that are actually not as high as they are in Toronto. Toronto's quite high. The highest in fact, America is New York City.
Wow.
And we could also see parts of California. So the costs to close a real estate transaction in the States are fundamentally about $1,000 to close a transaction. And in terms of transferring taxes, they are quite minimal.
Does that help, Sandra?
Yes, thank you very much.
And Sandra, before you go, stay on the line. Because you called in, I think we should give her a book. She asked a very specific question. So stay on the line. Our producer will get your address, and we'll make sure you get this book. We'll figure out a way to get it. So
great, thank you.
Thank you for the call,
Thank
Sandra.
You, Sandra.
So Richard, that brings up, again, some real logistics things. We talk about property managing. We're talking about taxes. And there's terms, because I've looked into this as well, there's terms like escrow. We use title insurance here. They use a deed. Or can you talk a little bit about some, there's words, they mean the same thing, but they do have a little bit of subtle difference. LLC versus limited partnership, we have that here, but it's just different structure.
Well, look, all these subtleties can really mean something if we were to have a conversation right now, but for every person, there's absolutely a unique proposition for them to enter the market, to do your cross-border plan, and to, in fact, get that plan in place before you enter that market.
Sure.
And so, yes, there are different subtleties. There are issues around using title insurance companies in the States, not escrow agents.
Okay.
The closing costs are transacted by your lawyer here. You don't have to go to the States to, in fact, transact, as some people often do. They pack their kids, they pack the bags, and they think they've got to go to close. Not necessarily true. And so a lot of this has been brokered in various ways that are actually quite charming for a Canadian investor. So if you were to ask any Canadian investor who's bought a property already for investment purposes, they've likely gone on to buy multiple. For those who want to buy their very first, it's a very long cycle because it's all about gaining the comforts. So in our world, it's a real three-step process. Number one, get yourself a conversation with a cross-border planner. Someone who can talk about the tax and legal consequences.
When you mean a planner, are you referring to a financial planner?
A lawyer. Someone who understands the legalities and the tax implications when it comes to buying U.S. real estate.
Okay.
And there's very few of them in the country, but most practitioners have some level of expertise, and David Franklin, as we found, has got probably the best in the country because he's most up to date. Number two is you want to make sure that you're going to have a due diligence strategy so that you know that you've set the bar high for all properties that you're going to vet and look at. And then number three, have that exit plan. That's one of the things I love about you. You want to make sure that you're going in with the end in mind.
Right.
You know that I'm not going to be there for a good time or a long time, but a profitable time.
Right.
So is it a cash flow game I'm playing, or I just want a little bit of capital appreciation, or is it a combination of both?
Yep.
But we make that decision going in so that way we're really clear, so that as we're there with you in the beginning, we're also there with you in the end.
Now, you touched on three things that I would say, well, that's what you do here in Canada.
Absolutely.
The one difference, though, is the planner, the very first one, because it is a U.S., there is a different sort of step involved. But I think what you're talking about, like anything, and we highly encourage it, is write a business plan.
Absolutely.
Write it all out.
Absolutely.
And get those numbers in line.
Mark, you've been a champion of writing business plans. When I hear you say that, it's all about making sure you're clear about your intention. You have a framework of expectations, so that you're able to frame your experiences.
Don't mean to cut you off,
Please
but the
do.
phone's ringing off the
Please.
hook. We have Jennifer on the line. Hi, Jennifer. What's your question? Thanks for calling.
My question has to do with borrowing. So you don't have the collateral or the cash to buy a property in the States, but how about approaching a bank in the States to borrow? So you put $10,000 down, let's say, and borrow. How is that possibly or feasible?
Well, that's a great question, Jennifer. The reality right now is that if you were to buy it for personal use, that would be one conversation. And if that is the conversation, then there are plenty of banks that will actually be willing to lend to you monies on a secondary residence, a home away from home. If it's for investment purposes, there are a number of American banks, foreign banks, and a couple of Canadian banks that have actually teamed up with some vendors across the states. A few that we're familiar with are in Florida, as well as in Arizona.
Florida I'm looking at, actually.
That's okay, good. So then you are eligible to have that conversation because you've got some banks who were involved with the developer before and have some sort of entitlement and or some joint venture and or joint interests. So they want to help and assist in aiding folks like you in making that purchase friendly. So it's on a case-by-case basis. It's on a state-by-state basis.
Okay.
If you were to have a conversation with us, we'd get really clear as to where your interest lies most. And if borrowing for your purchase is important, then we'd narrow down your options to the very ones that make most sense for you.
Because I'm at the point of I'm ready to, if I spoke to you now and said, okay, we're going to be in Florida next week Friday to buy a property.
Absolutely.
I'm there.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
I'm ready. I'm just waiting for that.
Is she inviting us to Florida?
Maybe. That number to say, hey, go.
That's wonderful. One of the things that the U.S. Property Shop does in conjunction with REIN is that we actually put together what's called orientation vacations. So if you were to say that you are actually keen on getting down there next week, then we would set you up with an itinerary.
Okay, so I need your number.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, then, you know what, Jennifer, you're touching on, and you're going to get a free book as well.
Absolutely.
Richard's
we'll
brand new book. So stay on the line,
in
and we'll make sure that you get Richard's number and that we're going to send you a book. So, Jennifer,
wonderful.
So much. Thank you for the call. Keep watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Now, Richard, again, she's touching on a lot of stuff. And, as she's talking there, I know that in building a business portfolio, that you run out of money, and that she's even talking already about borrowing and different things. We end up with what we call OPM, which is other people's money, and then we start forming joint ventures. And that takes us again back to the beginning of forming relationships, creating a joint venture. How does would a joint venture structure work the same in the U.S.?
Absolutely it would. It would work no different. I think what's important for anyone that wants to enter a joint venture conversation called, hey, I don't have enough to go and buy that place in Florida. I heard Richard speak about an orientation vacation. Hey, Mark, why don't we jump on a plane? We'll go down, have some fun, take a look at this itinerary, meet with some of their vendors, and if we find a door that we're really convinced makes a lot of sense, then we'll both go 50-50 on it. Here's the challenge that we find. If we don't have that conversation early on, as in, I want to be able to let my friends and family use it, but you want to rent it out, we've got a challenge.
You know what, Richard? The phones are ringing off the hook, but we are still running out of time.
Oh, please.
So we've had a call in, and all we're doing is taking questions. So the question quickly is this, and I can see what he's up to, which I can appreciate. He's saying he's going to go to Florida. Where would he buy in Florida? Like what areas? Like, we have a 10-city thing here in Canada. Where do you think would be a good area for him to look at?
Well, one of the key
for valuations.
Well, for valuations right now, we absolutely love Daytona. We absolutely see a lot of value in Clearwater, and understand there's two types of rental markets. You've got retired folks, and you've also got the working class.
Sure.
In parts of Florida that makes a lot of sense for working class, we're seeing a lot of great things happening in Miami, South Florida, where valuations are strong, and you've got a metropolis that's also very strong. You've also got a very strong market in that particular part of Florida because it's a really large international hub. So you've got the place where the Miami Dolphins play and the Miami Heat, which are the world champions, coming back to defend their title. A lot happening. You've got a casino being slated to be development where the Miami Herald building currently is. Rumors that Steve Wynn is coming into South Beach, and a 400,000 square foot convention center. There's so much robust development, not just because the state of Florida wants it, but because the world is demanding it, because it's become that hub. So we're seeing a lot of great opportunity right there in South Florida.
Richard, we've got about a minute left. I could talk about it. You're referring to economic fundamentals, which I love to talk about, which is a foundation of mine. But I quickly want to talk a little bit about REIN, because I know that you're now the president of it. We've both been affected by it. But is there meetings? Are you still meeting in Toronto and stuff like that?
No, absolutely. The founding partner, Don Campbell, remains the founding partner and a very, very huge advocate and the ambassador for REIN. The CEO is Patrick Francie, who's been a longtime REIN member and a 5-year staff member of Don's. I've been selected to be the president, who's going to be the global ambassador of globalizing the business, taking that fundamentals to the world. So every month we meet, we would invite our viewers, go to REINCanada.com to learn more.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very
We're
much.
going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to have to get him on again. Thank you so much for watching Your Money in Real Estate. We'll see you next week.